Don't touch him. Your blood doesn't run in his veins. You have no right here. Vanessa's voice sliced through the ballroom as she ripped my grandson from my arms and shoved me to the floor. My wife stood frozen. My son lowered his eyes. Laughter rippled across the room. We've seen it all, haven't we? If you believe in life's balance, click subscribe and write your first name and where you're from. Let your voice be heard. The chandeliers above the ballroom glowed like burning suns, pouring gold across the marble floor. I had polished my shoes, ironed my shirt, even knotted the old navy blue tie Linda once said made me look like a younger man. Tonight was supposed to be about family, about celebrating my grandson's birthday. For 69 years I had carried steel on my back, sweat in my lungs, scars on my hands. I thought I had finally earned this. The quiet joy of holding a child who carried my blood. I bent down, arms open, ready to lift the boy. He reached for me, his little fingers stretching toward mine. For 1 second, I felt the weight of all those sacrifices, the missed promotions, the overnight shifts, the truck I sold, the blood I donated suddenly worth it. Because he was here. My grandson, my legacy. But before I could raise him, manicured nails snatched him away. Vanessa's grip was iron wrapped in silk. She yanked the boy close, her face bent toward mine, her words sharp enough to split bone. Don't touch him. Your blood doesn't run in his veins. You have no right here. Gasps flickered through the crowd. Some guests looked away, embarrassed. Others chuckled, pretending it was a joke. But it wasn't. I knew it. Everyone knew it. The shove came quick, careless. My knees cracked against the marble as I fell. The boy cried, confused, reaching for me while Vanessa tightened her hold. Mark, my son, my pride stood behind her, his eyes fixed on the ground. And Linda, my wife of 4 decades, pressed her lips together, silent as if silence could make her invisible. The pain wasn't just in my knees. It was in the weight of 40 years collapsing into a single, humiliating moment. All the hours, all the sacrifices, all the trust I saw them vanish in the reflection of that polished floor. I looked up, surrounded by suits, gowns, and champagne glasses, and I knew I was no longer father, no longer husband, no longer head of this family. I was an intruder in the house I had built. But shadows remember, and mine was just beginning to stir. They don't remember the calloused hands, but I do. They don't remember the bloodshot eyes, the nights I came home coated in steel dust, but I do. I remember it all. The steel mill was a monster, roaring, sweating, never sleeping. It swallowed me whole when I was 20 and didn't spit me out until I was past 65. I worked double shifts when the foreman said others couldn't handle the heat. I never said no. I took the worst assignments because they paid more per hour, and every extra dollar mattered. Mark was just a kid when I started pulling those back-breaking night shifts. I used to tape his drawings to my locker. He once drew me in a red cape and said I was stronger than Superman. That picture stayed in my wallet for 20 years. Every paycheck, I tucked something away just a little. College, tuition, books, gas money. By the time Mark turned 17, I had nearly emptied my bones to fill his future. And when he got into law school, full ride or not, I still paid for his car, his off-campus housing, and sent him groceries when he was too proud to ask. They all talk about what a successful man he became, what a brilliant lawyer, what a lucky husband. But no one talks about the man behind the curtain. They don't talk about the father who gave up everything. But I remember, and I always will. Some sacrifices don't make noise. They don't get applause. They don't show up in family photos. Like the day I sold my truck, the only vehicle I ever owned. I'd had it since the factory gave bonuses back in 2089. Cherry red, reliable, mine. But when Linda's father got sick, and the bills came in faster than breath, I sold it in 3 days flat. I didn't ask for help. I didn't complain. I took the bus to work that winter, standing in the snow with steel-toed boots, soaked to the bone. Every mile I walked felt like duty. I told myself, this is what men do. I started donating blood more often, not out of charity, out of necessity. A few extra bucks to cover Mark's rent, or his textbooks, or whatever he was too proud to mention. I kept the receipts in a drawer, never told anyone. Linda said she'd make it up to me. Said once Mark graduated, once things calmed down, we'd take that road trip to Montana. Just the two of us. I believed her. But that trip never came. Mark graduated, got married. Vanessa had plans, bigger ones. And Linda, she went along with them. Years passed. I watched our savings stretch thinner and thinner. I never asked where the money went. I already knew. They all forgot what I gave. But I didn't. Not one damn thing. She didn't need to storm in. She didn't yell or demand. No, Vanessa was smarter than that. She came in smiling. At first, she laughed at my old stories, took photos with me at the wedding, called me Dad. I was wary, her pearls too perfect, her handshake too soft, but Linda insisted she was just nervous. She comes from a different world, she said. She wasn't kidding. Vanessa's family had money, old money. Her father owned properties across 3 states. Her mother chaired foundations. Mark married into power, and power came with strings. Soon, she was managing their finances. Then she began hosting holidays in their home instead of ours. She decorated our house without asking. She made subtle jokes about our taste. About my boots at the front door. About the wallpaper Linda once loved. And then Mark began copying her tone. Shorter visits. Fewer calls. When I asked why he didn't come by as much, he said, "Vanessa's been busy. You know how it is." No, I didn't know how it was. I just knew I was disappearing. Linda smiled through it. Claimed we should be proud. Said letting go was part of growing up. But I could see it. Vanessa had taken hold of the leash, and my son followed wherever she led. And every time I stood my ground, Vanessa found a new way to sideline me. She didn't invade the house. She rewired it. And by the time I realized it, she was already in control. The birthday party was meant to be a celebration. Streamers, balloons, a custom cake with little trains on top. Our grandson had just turned 3. I brought him a wooden rocking horse, hand-carved, varnished, and wrapped in a bow. Took me 3 months to build in the garage, but when I walked in, no one looked twice. Vanessa didn't acknowledge the gift. Mark gave me a half-hearted pat on the back. Linda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I felt like an outsider entering someone else's home. The house was filled with her people, Vanessa's family, her friends, her world. Waiters in white gloves, soft classical music playing. Not one picture of me on the wall, not one sign I belonged. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, I moved forward with the horse. My grandson saw me, his eyes lit up, arms outstretched. But that moment, that single innocent gesture, was what broke everything. Vanessa stepped in like a switchblade. She pulled him away from me so fast he almost lost his balance. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, she hissed, "Don't touch him. Your blood doesn't run in his veins. You have no right here." The room froze. A few people looked away. Others chuckled awkwardly. I stood there, holding the gift, trying to process what she said. Then she pushed me. I didn't fall hard, but it was enough. Enough to make the room gasp. Enough to make my knees buckle. Enough to make my soul rupture. And Mark? He said nothing. Linda? She stepped back. In that moment, everything I had built collapsed around me silently. There were no fireworks, no arguments, just that cold, ugly silence. I stood up, slow, knees aching, pride shattered, gift still in my hands. I placed the horse gently in the corner and walked out. No one followed me. No one stopped me. And from that day forward, I stopped pretending I was still part of that family. They had drawn a line. And finally, so did I. The steel mill never slept. It breathed smoke, roared with fire, and demanded pieces of your soul every hour. I clocked in when the moon rose and clocked out long after sunrise. The night shift was punishment to some, but to me, it was survival. When Mark was young, I worked nights so I could be there for him after school. I'd catch 2 hours of sleep and show up at his baseball games with eyes red and hands blackened by grease. He'd wave from the dugout, and for a while, that was enough. But the night shift took its toll. The machines screamed louder at night. The air was heavier. The heat was merciless. I lost hearing in my left ear from years of grinding steel. I wore boots until the soles fell apart because new ones meant skipping groceries. I ate meals from vending machines, showered at the plant, missed holidays, missed anniversaries, missed myself. No one saw those nights. No one asked. I remember one shift when the furnace malfunctioned. The room went white hot. Alarms blared. While others ran, I stayed welding plates into place to prevent a total collapse. I got a plaque for it. Linda hung it in the hallway until Vanessa replaced it with a mirror. I used to count the burns on my arms like medals. Each one reminded me I had survived. Each one reminded me I stayed for them. For Mark, for Linda, for the family I thought I was building. I gave those nights. I gave my lungs, my hearing, my skin, But they only remember the man I became after retirement. Quiet, tired, unnecessary. They don't know what I gave up to give them everything. But I do, and every sleepless night still burns beneath my skin. I still remember the day Mark graduated. It was humid and gray, with thunder rumbling in the distance. I wore my best shirt pressed and tucked, still smelled faintly of machine oil, no matter how hard I scrubbed. My boots were shined, my back ached. But nothing could keep me from that auditorium. I got there 2 hours early, found a seat near the back. The good ones were saved for donors and deans. I didn't mind. I just wanted to see him walk across that stage. When they called his name Mark Walker, Juris Doctor, I stood up and clapped. Loud. Too loud, probably. A few heads turned. Linda pulled on my sleeve, embarrassed. But I didn't care. That was my boy. That name didn't get there on its own. It was carved from every night I didn't sleep, every time I went without, every birthday I missed, every shift I took, every dollar I set aside instead of spending. And when he walked off that stage, all sharp suit and polished shoes, I saw pride in his eyes. He found me in the crowd, nodded, smiled. That one look, just that was everything to me. I held on to it like a lifeline, a promise, proof that he saw me. Afterward, we took a photo, me, Linda, and Mark in his gown. I was still holding my work jacket over my arm. My hands looked like they didn't belong in the picture, but my heart was full. He was going to be someone. And I told myself, this is what it was all for. The pain, the years, the silence. If I had to do it all over again, I would have. Because that day, for one brief hour, I thought it had all been worth it. I never took the foreman job. They offered it twice. First, when Jerry retired, then again when Mason moved down south. It came with better hours, a raise, even a company truck. But it also meant less overtime. Less overtime meant less money. And I had a son headed to college. So I said no. I watched younger men take that desk, wear that badge, leave work at 5 while I kept burning through nights. They joked that I was crazy, that I'd die with a wrench in my hand. I laughed with them, but deep down, I knew what I was doing. I was trading my own future for Mark's time. Linda wanted to see the Rockies. Every year she brought it up. Road trip, just the two of us. Windows down, wind in our hair. We'd plan it on paper, even bought a map once. But something always came up. Tuition, books, hospital bills, always something. She never blamed me, but I blamed myself. I missed her birthday 4 years in a row. Didn't even realize until she stopped reminding me. Missed our anniversary twice. I was always at work or asleep or on a bus headed somewhere to fix someone else's problems. I missed weddings, missed funerals, missed old friends drifting away, missed my own reflection. Sometimes I'd stand in the bathroom and stare in the mirror, wondering who the hell I was anymore. Just a pair of hands, just a paycheck. But I kept telling myself it was worth it. One day I thought, one day they'll see. Turns out, they only saw the parts that were useful. The rest, they didn't just forget. They erased. Linda used to be my voice when I didn't have the strength to speak. She was fire when someone disrespected me, warmth when I came home bruised. In the early days, she'd rub my shoulders while I sat at the table half asleep, murmuring, "You're doing everything right, Tommy. He'll thank you someday." But somewhere along the way, her voice faded. It didn't happen all at once. It started with missed dinners, phone calls ending quicker, her gaze lingering too long on the new furniture Vanessa picked out. Then came the little things correcting me in front of guests, brushing off my opinions, laughing just a little too hard at Vanessa's side-eyed jokes. I brushed it off. Marriage changes, I told myself. 40 years is a long time. People evolve. But then came the moment that shattered everything. We were at Mark and Vanessa's house for Christmas. Vanessa made some sly comment about old traditions, dying out, a jab at my insistence on homemade ornaments. Everyone laughed. I looked to Linda, expecting her to roll her eyes in solidarity. But she didn't. She laughed with them. Worse, she leaned in and whispered something back to Vanessa, and they both cackled like schoolgirls. I sat there, blinking, not angry, not hurt, just empty. That's when I knew I was alone in my own marriage. It wasn't just Mark who had changed. Linda had chosen comfort over character, peace over principle. And when Vanessa started slicing me down in public, Linda stood beside her like it was easier to let me bleed than to lift a finger. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. Some betrayals scream. Hers was silent. and that silence was louder than any slap to the face. They stopped asking my opinion long before they stopped pretending to care. At first, it was little things: Mark handling the mortgage without checking in, Vanessa making changes to the kitchen in my house, saying, "It's more functional this way." Then it was holidays being planned without me, invitations arriving late or not at all. One day I walked into the living room and found them hosting a dinner. People I didn't know, laughing in chairs I built. My framed military photo had been taken down, replaced with some abstract art Vanessa called modern serenity. No one introduced me. I just stood there in the hallway like a ghost. That night, Vanessa said it outright. "We're trying to modernize, Tom. You've had your time." Had my time? I gave them time. I gave them my entire life. Later that month, I overheard her on the phone. She called me deadweight, said I was just an old man taking up space. And Mark? He didn't correct her. He nodded. That's when the whispers started. Assisted living, retirement homes, downsizing. Vanessa pushed pamphlets across the table like they were dinner menus. I didn't say a word, just looked at Linda. She avoided my eyes. I had built this home with my bare hands, poured the cement, raised the beams, installed every damn window, and now they were deciding when I should leave it. No confrontation, no conversation, just quiet replacement. They didn't want me gone because I was incapable. They wanted me gone because I reminded them of who they used to be before money, before power, before they traded gratitude for entitlement. And for the first time, I saw myself through their eyes. Not a father, not a husband, just a burden. That's when something in me started to wake up. The table used to be where we laughed. I built it with my own hands, oak planks sanded smooth, legs carved and bolted tight. Linda once called it our heartwood. Every birthday, holiday, Sunday roast, that table held our memories. But now it was a display piece. Vanessa filled it with centerpieces too tall to see across. Every plate matched. Every glass sparkled. But the warmth was gone. The laughter, the stories, the bickering over which pie was best, all of it gone. We sat down one evening, the whole family, me, Linda, Mark, Vanessa, and the boy. It should have felt like home, but it felt like a showroom. They talked about stocks, about real estate. Vanessa bragged about hosting a brunch with the mayor's wife. Mark mentioned his firm expanding into corporate law. No one asked how I was. I tried to chime in. Told a story from the plant about a guy who once welded his glove to a beam and pretended it was a prank hand. They chuckled, politely. Then went right back to talking about a new Pilates instructor Vanessa swore by. I stared at my plate, the roast beef going cold. My grandson fidgeted with a toy under the table. I slipped him a wink. He smiled. For a second, I felt connected again. Then Vanessa snapped at him. "Sit up straight. Don't fidget." He shrank back, just like I had been doing for months. When dinner ended, I stayed behind to clear the dishes. No one stopped me. No one offered to help. I scraped their leftovers into the trash, washed their wine glasses, and wiped down the table I had built. That table used to hold the weight of family. Now it just held silence. And silence, I was learning, was the loudest kind of betrayal. When my grandson was born, I thought things might change. I held him for the first time in that quiet hospital room. He was so small, swaddled tight, blinking up at me like he already knew who I was. His hand gripped my finger, and in that moment, something cracked open in me, something soft, something hopeful. I thought, maybe this child would be my second chance. A clean slate, a new bond. Not through Mark, not through Linda, but through the boy himself. For a while, it almost seemed like I was right. He'd squeal when he saw me, crawl toward my boots, giggle at the sound of my deep voice. I started carving toys again. Wooden blocks, a train set. Linda called me silly, said that kind of thing isn't safe anymore, but the boy loved them. I saw it in his eyes. But then Vanessa started pulling him away. Little things. She'd say he was tired when I came to visit. Or she'd conveniently forget to tell me about his recitals, his birthdays. When I asked Mark why, he just said, "You know how She Island," as if that excused anything. The distance grew, and then came that birthday party. The boy saw me, reached out. Pure joy on his face. And Vanessa tore him away. "Don't touch him. Your blood doesn't run in his veins. You have no right here." That wasn't just a lie. That was a knife. Mark didn't stop her. Linda didn't speak. And I knew right then, right there, this child I had pinned my last hopes on was being turned into a weapon, used against me, shielded from me, molded to believe I was no one. They weren't just cutting me out of their lives, they were erasing me from his. And that night, as I sat alone in the garage with his half-finished toy horse beside me, I realized something terrifying. I had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing left to lose doesn't forget. He plans. It started with a thunderstorm. The power flickered, and I went up to the attic to check the wiring. That's when I saw it, an old trunk shoved behind holiday boxes and rusted fishing gear. I hadn't touched it in years, maybe decades. I dragged it out, dust pluming into the air. It smelled like old cedar and forgotten time. Inside, beneath a folded American flag and a few yellowed photographs, were documents I didn't even remember keeping. Retirement files, insurance policies, pension statements, old letters from the steel mill, bank account routing info from 30 years back. Every paper had my name on it, every line tied to blood, sweat, and sacrifice. I sat on the floor, the rain hammering the roof, and read through them one by one. And what I found? Everything they had built, the house, the healthcare, the lifestyle, they were all still connected to me. Accounts still under my name, policies I had never changed. Mark had never asked, and I had never updated. They just assumed. The health insurance, my policy, the house deed, co-signed by me, the retirement savings, technically never transferred. Mark and Vanessa had built their castle on a foundation that still belonged to me, and they didn't even know it. That discovery didn't make me angry. It made me still, like standing in the eye of a storm. I stared down at the papers in my lap and realized I wasn't powerless. They had buried me before I was dead. But they forgot one thing. You can't bury a man who still holds the deed, and I wasn't done holding. I made a list. Not out of revenge. Not yet. Just facts. I started with the insurance policy mine, still active, still covering Mark and Vanessa. Premiums paid directly from an account I set up 15 years ago. I logged in, they hadn't changed the password. Then the house. The deed was still tied to me. Technically, I was part owner. I helped with the down payment when Mark couldn't afford the full mortgage. Vanessa never knew. She thought they'd bought it clean, but I held the paper. Then came the retirement accounts. I had rolled mine into a secondary investment fund, one I never touched. I did it in the 92nd for tax reasons. Forgot about it. But now, that fund was the backbone of Mark's business loan, a loan he never paid back. The collateral? My name. And finally, the health insurance. Mark's entire family, Vanessa, their kid, even Linda, were listed as dependents under my plan. I had kept it active out of guilt, out of hope, out of habit. Now, I saw the full picture. They weren't just disrespecting me. They were living off me. Every vacation they took, every hospital visit, every luxury that cushioned their lives, it all traced back to me. Not Mark's paycheck, not Vanessa's inheritance. Me. They had used me like a well they thought would never run dry. But that well had found the valve. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like a man holding power, not because I wanted to take, but because I finally realized just how much they'd taken already. It wasn't just a memory. Someone had recorded it. The fall, the shove, the words, "Don't touch him, your blood doesn't run in his veins," all caught on video, clean audio, perfect angle. I didn't know until a co-worker's daughter, who had been hired to photograph the party, sent me a message. "Mr. Walker, I don't know if you want this, but I thought you should have it." Attached was a 36-second clip. I watched it in the dark, alone, on an old laptop with a flickering screen. I watched Vanessa rip the child from my arms. I saw myself stumble, heard the gasp from the crowd, saw Linda standing motionless in the corner. But what gutted me most was Mark, standing behind his wife, saying nothing, not even flinching, hands in his pockets, expression flat. I watched it again. And again. Each time, I saw it more clearly, not just the betrayal, but the truth. This wasn't just a bad moment. This was who they had become. And this video? This wasn't just footage. It was proof. Undeniable. Unforgivable. It showed the world what they had done, what they truly thought of me. It was the kind of thing that couldn't be explained away. Not in a courtroom, not in a conference room, not in front of a client or a board or a judge. Mark's spotless reputation, Vanessa's social standing, their perfect suburban image, all of it hanging by a thread. And in my hands, a pair of rusty scissors. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, didn't feel victorious. I just saved the file in 3 different places. Then I sat back and started planning. The next morning, I didn't drink coffee. I drank silence. I sat on the porch with the documents in one hand and the video file in the other, the sunrise bleeding slowly through the trees. There was no rage in me, no bitterness, just clarity, cold and steady, like winter steel. For so long I thought revenge meant fury, fire, screaming matches and slammed doors. But this was colder, cleaner. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to withdraw, because the truth was, I didn't owe them a damn thing. Not Mark, not Vanessa, not even Linda. I had paid again and again, and now I finally saw the cost. I thought about everything they'd said, every slight, every silence, every smile that hit a knife, and suddenly the steps ahead became obvious. I wouldn't scream, wouldn't argue. I would use the system they worshipped, the law, the money, the appearances to dismantle the life they built on my back. They relied on structure? Good. I knew how to collapse it, one legal brick at a time. No threats, no chaos, just precision. Mark would wake up one day and find the floor missing beneath him. Vanessa would look around and see no one left applauding. Linda would hear the door close and realize it wasn't coming back open. That was the clarity. It wasn't about getting even. It was about reclaiming what was mine and letting them feel the weight of losing what they thought they'd never have to earn. Cold clarity. That's all I had left. And it was enough. I didn't make a scene. I made a checklist. One by one, I started the paperwork. Bank forms, beneficiary updates, withdrawal notices. I printed everything out, signed where needed, highlighted what mattered. It was methodical, like fixing a machine. Every bolt in place, every piece calibrated. I called the investment manager I hadn't spoken to in years. He was surprised to hear from me. I kept it polite, formal. Just reviewing my estate, I said. No one suspected a thing. At night, I spread the papers across the dining room table, the same one they laughed around while I washed dishes in the kitchen. Now it was my command center. I filed for policy control changes, transferred my pension, rerouted the retirement funds to a personal trust. Every single move was legal, traceable, bulletproof. I contacted the HR rep from the mill, confirmed that the health plan was still under my control. I gave notice to revoke all dependents. No emotion, just clean cuts. I took screenshots, made copies, locked originals in a fireproof safe I installed in the back of the closet. I even created a new email, one they didn't know about, one I'd use to send what needed sending when the time came. And the video? I uploaded it to a private cloud, backed it up on a flash drive. Hid that flash drive in a hollowed-out book on my shelf. The Old Man in the Sea. Poetic, I thought. It wasn't rage that kept me up at night anymore. It was focus. And by the end of that week, the plan was no longer a thought. It was a loaded chamber, waiting for the trigger. There were moments, quiet ones, when doubt crept in. Sometimes I'd walk past the photo shelf and catch a glimpse of young Mark, missing his front teeth, standing next to me in front of the mill. He had his hand in mine, grinning like I was the whole world. I'd feel my grip on the plan soften, just a little. What if I was overreacting? What if I was just tired, and old, and bitter? But then I'd remember the dinner table silence, the shove, the birthday humiliation, and the face Mark made when Vanessa spoke those words. Not surprise, not anger, just indifference. That's what killed it for me. Not the cruelty, the indifference. I thought about talking to Linda, about giving her a warning or a final chance. Maybe she'd listen, maybe she'd see. But then I remembered her laughing, leaning into Vanessa, choosing silence. She made her decision long before I ever started making mine. Temptation is sneaky. It wears the face of love, the voice of memory. But love without respect is just nostalgia dressed in guilt. And I wasn't building a future on guilt anymore. Every time my resolve wavered, I'd go back to the clip. Just 36 seconds. That's all it took to remind me. Not of what they did, but of who they were, and more importantly, who I had become when I let them use me. That man was gone. And the one who remained didn't need their permission to finish what he started. The final form was simple, just one page. A signature, a date, a checkbox confirming sole ownership of the retirement account. The pen didn't shake in my hand. That surprised me. After everything, decades of work, of waiting, of being silenced, I thought there'd be hesitation, guilt, fear, something. There wasn't. there was only weight. The weight of the pen, the weight of knowing that with one stroke I would reclaim everything they'd quietly stolen without a single raised voice or slammed door. I signed. The ink bled through the page just slightly, heavy-handed, like always, the way I used to hold a wrench, the way I once held Mark's hand crossing the street. That was it. It was done. I placed the signed copy into the folder, slid it into the fireproof safe, and locked it. My chest didn't rise with pride. It didn't swell with revenge. It simply settled, like a machine, finally cooling after years of overwork. I stood at the window for a long time that evening, watching the light drain from the sky, watching my reflection in the glass older, yes, but not broken, not lost. I thought about the boy, my grandson. I didn't know what they'd tell him about me, but one day, when he was older, when he asked where I went, maybe just maybe he'd find that rocking horse in the attic, or the carved train, or the old hollowed-out book, and maybe he'd understand I wasn't the man they painted me to be. I was the man who built everything they had, and now I was the man who took it back, not with fire, with ink. And ink, I've learned, lasts longer than blood. It began with a quiet click, a login, a password, a simple transfer request. I didn't even need to leave the house. I sat in my old chair, coffee going cold beside me, and moved the first piece on the board. The retirement account mine was split across 2 funds. I consolidated them into a private trust under my name. Legal, final, invisible to them until too late. They wouldn't feel it at first, not right away. The statements would take a cycle or 2 to catch up, but when they logged in and saw access restricted, they'd know. The second move? The investment line Mark had been quietly draining with his so-called loan repayments. I froze the account, redirected the automatic payments, flagged his access as unauthorized. Again, no confrontation, just silence, coded into financial terms. The third strike? The property clause. I invoked a dormant clause buried deep in the house deed, a clause that allowed me to request formal reassessment of ownership in the event of financial misrepresentation. Mark signed that clause 12 years ago. He'd forgotten. I hadn't. I drafted a formal notice of review, typed it clean, printed it with the same hands that once taught him how to hold a pencil. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to knock on their door. I mailed it, certified, tracked, and when it arrived on their doorstep, I imagined the look on Vanessa's face, confusion, then panic, then the dawning realization that the man they erased had been paying attention all along. Checkmate? Not yet, but the game had officially begun. The next step wasn't loud. It was clinical. I called the health insurance provider, gave them my policy number, answered their verification questions with the precision of a man who'd done it all before. Then I said the words, "I'd like to remove all dependents from this policy." The rep paused. All? Yes. Click, click, typing on their end. A moment of silence. Then, it's done. And just like that, Vanessa's prenatal visits? Gone. The boy's pediatric coverage? Gone. Mark's cushy dental and vision benefits? Gone. Linda's name? Erased. Not illegally, not cruelly, just responsibly. They were not my responsibility anymore. When Mark called the provider later that week, I imagined the confusion in his voice. "I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. You're no longer listed as a dependent." The silence that must have followed. Vanessa wouldn't take it well. She'd rant, blame paperwork, threaten lawsuits she couldn't file, call everyone except the one person who held the answers. Me. And that's what stung them most. They couldn't scream at me, couldn't guilt me, couldn't twist it back. Because I hadn't yelled, I hadn't cursed, I hadn't even spoken. I'd simply unplugged the machine they'd been feeding off. And now, with no benefits, no safety net, no fallback, they'd have to face a world they thought they were too good to ever fall into. Not out of revenge, out of necessity. They burned the bridge. I just made sure they couldn't walk back across it. Whispers started before the week was over. I didn't say a word, but I didn't have to. I sent one package. No return address. Inside, a USB drive with a single video file. The 36 seconds that changed everything. I mailed it to the law firm where Mark worked. Addressed it to the managing partner. Just one line scribbled on a sticky note. Thought you should know who's on your letterhead. I mailed another to Vanessa's favorite charity board. She loved the gala photos, loved playing perfect. Let's see how perfect she looked, pushing an old man to the ground in a room full of gasping guests. I didn't send it to everyone, just the ones who mattered. Mark's mentor, Vanessa's sponsor, a quiet ripple through the elite they so desperately wanted to impress. And I waited, didn't need to dig for updates. Because people talk. I heard from a friend at the mill whose cousin's husband worked admin at Mark's office. Your boy got pulled into a closed-door meeting last Thursday. Word is, it wasn't friendly. I went to get my oil changed, and the shop owner, Vanessa's former classmate, just shook his head. Shame. Always thought she was high and mighty. Guess that crash was overdue. Their circle, the one they used to brag about, the one they clung to like armor, went quiet. Calls went unanswered. Invites dried up. Smiles turned tight. They had painted me as bitter, outdated, disposable, but the truth always finds light. And, once it does, even the best reputations rot fast. I didn't have to ruin them. I just had to let them show people who they really were. They say you don't notice the ground until it's gone. For Mark and Vanessa, that moment came on a Tuesday. I imagine the routine was the same: coffee brewed, emails checked, bills queued up. But when Mark logged into the investment dashboard, he didn't see the usual green numbers. He saw a lock icon. Access denied. He tried again. Same result. Then came the emails, first confusion, then urgency, then panic. The account wasn't frozen by fraud. It was closed. By me. The loans? Defaulted. The interest? Compounded. The legal right to repayment? Expired. Next came the mortgage statement. Mark always set it to autopay. But the bank contacted him directly. There's been a change in property structure. We need new verification from both title holders. He didn't even know I was still listed, until that moment. Meanwhile, Vanessa tried to refill a prescription. Insurance denied. Not covered. She must have called Linda in a frenzy. But Linda didn't have answers, because I hadn't told her either. I wasn't hiding. I was simply unreachable. Every door they tried to open, bank, benefits, legal, slammed shut with the same echo. Access denied. They built a life assuming the old man would stay in the corner. Quiet. Obedient. Out of the way. But when they cut me out emotionally, they forgot to cut the roots I still owned legally. And now, the roots were pulling down the tree. No threats. No noise. Just a slow, silent collapse. And the knowledge that I wasn't locked out. They were. Their calls came like clockwork. First, Linda. 3 missed calls. A voicemail I didn't listen to. Then Mark. 1 text. Dad, can we talk? Please. I left it unread. Vanessa didn't call. Of course she didn't. She sent an email. Polite, cold, legal. Requesting clarification regarding the changes to the retirement and health accounts. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Convenience? Mine passed years ago. I archived it. That night, I sat in my chair as the house grew quiet. No buzzing phone, no urgent footsteps, no guilt. I turned on the old record player Sinatra, one for my baby. Let it fill the silence they used to crowd out. Because now, the silence was mine. Mark must have called everyone he could. His old law professor. His firm's ethics committee. The neighbor he once mocked me for chatting with. But no one answered. Not for him. Reputation is a ladder. And when the foundation cracks, every rung above shakes. People avoid messes they can't explain. And Mark? He'd become a cautionary tale whispered in conference rooms and golf carts. Promising guy. But did you hear what happened with his dad? Vanessa, once the queen of charity brunches, found her name missing from the next invite list. She tried to salvage it. Photos with the baby. A teary post about healing from generational wounds. Too late. No one was buying it. They hadn't lost everything. Yet. But they'd lost the one thing they worshipped. Control. And for the first time in a long time, I had it. I heard the knock at exactly 7:14 p.m. Not a hard one. Hesitant. I knew it was him before I opened the door. Mark. Hands in his coat pockets. Eyes sunken. Not from sleep, but from certainty unraveling. Dad, can we talk? I stepped aside. Said nothing. He walked in like a stranger. Like someone entering a church he'd once mocked. The silence between us stretched miles. I didn't know she'd do that, he finally said. A lie. Things got out of hand. A coward's phrase. She's under stress. A deflection. Still, I said nothing. He looked at the living room, at the worn recliner, the photos still up, the quiet pride of a life built by hand. I'm sorry, he mumbled, but it didn't land. Not because it wasn't enough. Because it was 20 years too late. He sat across from me, tried to explain. Childhood pressure, financial strain, Vanessa's ambitions, Linda's neutrality. All just smoke around the fire. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. I thought we'd fix it later. There is no later. I miss how things used to be. So did I before you replaced love with convenience. I leaned forward, finally meeting his eyes. There's nothing left to fix, Mark. His jaw clenched. You really gonna cut us off, after everything? No, I said quietly. I'm cutting myself free. He looked like a boy again, staring up from a punishment he didn't expect. And in that moment, I realized I didn't hate him. I pitied him, because he'd never truly built anything. He just inherited it. And now, it was gone. He stood, said nothing, walked to the door, paused. If you ever want to see your grandson again. I raised an eyebrow. He couldn't even finish the threat. Good night, Mark. I closed the door, and locked it. Not out of anger. Out of finality. He came for a second chance. What he found was the end of the line. It was Linda who showed up next. No warning. Just her car in the driveway. Mid-morning sun glinting off the windshield like it belonged there. I didn't open the door at first, but I watched her from the kitchen window. Purse clutched. Wrinkled face drawn tight with worry or pride, I couldn't tell anymore. When I finally cracked the door, she looked smaller than I remembered. I came to talk, she said. I nodded. Let her speak. I didn't know it would get this bad. I thought they were just young, that they'd grow out of it. She paused, then added, I didn't mean to choose sides, but silence is a side. When Vanessa pushed me to the ground, Linda didn't speak up. When Mark rewrote history with half-truths, she smiled through it. I tried to keep the peace, she said. Peace for who? She wanted forgiveness, but she brought no apology. Just regrets wrapped in nostalgia. I miss you, she whispered. And for a split second, I missed her too. Missed who we used to be before money made cowards of all of them. I can't undo it, she said. I know, I replied. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. We stood in silence on the porch, where we'd once shared coffee before Mark's school bus came. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. I don't want to lose you, she said. You already did, I said quietly. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't argue. Because she knew. This wasn't cruelty. It was closure. I turned, walked back inside, and closed the door for the last time. The final thread had been cut, and it didn't fall with a scream. It fell with a whisper. I never meant for the world to see it. But one day, it happened. The clip, the 36 seconds that sealed everything, was leaked. Not by me. By someone who got it secondhand. A paralegal, maybe. Or a board member who'd had enough of Vanessa's performance. It started as a whisper on a private group chat. Then it hit a parenting forum. Then it landed on a Facebook page titled Daughters-in-Law from Hell. Within 48 hours, it had over 1 million views. People commented, shared, stitched it into videos about generational betrayal, added dramatic music, zoomed in on Vanessa's sneer, on my body hitting the floor. Suddenly, my humiliation became their headline. Steelworker grandfather pushed by spoiled daughter-in-law. Retired hero disowned by family fights back with silence. Even the local news picked it up. They didn't know my name, but they knew my story. And in the background, Mark and Vanessa's faces became symbols of greed, of entitlement, of cold modern cruelty. Vanessa shut down her social media. Mark took a leave from the firm. Linda stopped showing up to church. I didn't gloat. I didn't comment. I didn't even watch the full thing. Why? Because I'd already lived it. Once was enough. This wasn't my justice. It was theirs. The public simply saw what I had seen for years. And unlike me, they didn't stay quiet. In the end, I didn't push the clip. I just lit the match. The wind did the rest. My mornings are kidder now. I wake up when the sun rises. No alarm, no rush. I put the kettle on, let it whistle, pour it slow. The kind of slow I never had time for back then. The paper still comes. I still read it cover to cover. Sometimes I walk to the corner diner. The waitress knows my name, knows I like my eggs over hard and my coffee black. She calls me Mr. Walker. Nobody here asks about my son. Nobody whispers about my family. Because here I'm just Thomas. Not a cautionary tale, not a victim, just a man who survived his own story. I started fixing up the shed, cleaned out 30 years of rust and dust, gave away the old tools, kept just enough to build what I wanted, not what anyone else needed. I wrote a letter to the boy. Didn't send it, but I wrote it, told him about the rocking horse, about the day he was born, about the way he laughed when I made the stuffed bear dance. I told him I never stopped caring, just stopped waiting to be wanted. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. Their stubborn little things need sun, water, patience. I think I understand them better now. Sometimes people pass by. Ask if I'm the guy from the video. I smile. Say no. Because that man? That was me before the silence. Before the door closed. Before the peace arrived. Now. I don't need the world to remember. I just need to remember who I am without them. And the truth is, I finally liked the answer. It came in the mail. A small envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in a child's uneven print. Inside, a drawing. A house with a red roof. A man with gray hair. A little boy holding his hand. One word scrawled underneath. Papa. I sat down hard, letter shaking. No note. No explanation. Just that one picture. I stared at it for a long time. It could have been a coincidence, a child's imagination, a guess. But I knew that handwriting, knew the tilt of the R, the backwards P. I'd seen it on birthday cards before Vanessa took over. He remembered. Somehow, through the noise, he remembered, and he still saw me as his grandfather. Not a stranger, not a villain, just Papa. I didn't cry. I just held it. Let the ache wash through me, like warm rain after a cold winter. I didn't frame it, didn't scan it or share it. I folded it carefully and placed it in the hollowed-out book in my study, the one that used to hold emergency cash. Now it holds something far rarer, proof that not all ties break. Some bend, some stretch, some survive. I don't know if he sent it alone. I don't know if Linda helped, or if Mark ever even knew, but I knew one thing. They could try to erase me. They could cut me out, but they couldn't unteach what love feels like. And one day, that boy might come looking. And when he does, he'll find the man they buried still standing, still waiting, still full of love, but no longer full of silence. I used to think I needed it. An apology, just once. From Mark, from Linda, even from Vanessa. A simple acknowledgement. You didn't deserve that. But it never came. Not after the clip. Not after the silence. Not even after the drawing. Weeks passed. Then months. Holidays came and went. Birthdays faded. Seasons changed. And still, nothing. No knock on the door. No letter in the box. Not even a line in passing. And that's when it hit me. They weren't sorry. Not truly. They were sorry they got caught. Sorry their image cracked. Sorry they lost their grip. But sorry for the betrayal? Sorry for the shove? Sorry for watching me fall? Number. That would have required reflection. Remorse. Courage. And people like them, people who build their worth on power and proximity, don't offer apologies. They offer excuses. So I stopped waiting. And once I stopped waiting, something strange happened. I felt lighter, like putting down a suitcase I didn't know I'd been carrying. I didn't forgive them. Forgiveness is earned. But I released the need to hear it, because closure doesn't come from their mouth. It comes from my own choices. And I chose peace. No more bargaining. No more hoping they'd change. No more rereading old texts or imagining what I'd say if they showed up. They won't pay, and that's fine, because I didn't build this new life for them. I built it for the man they tried to erase, and he is finally whole again. It came through a lawyer. Of course it did. A formal letter. Legal stationery. Language so sterile it could have been written by a machine. Mark and Vanessa were willing to revisit financial arrangements and reestablish amicable terms if I was open to a discussion regarding reintegration. Reintegration, like I was a missing part of their machine. The letter danced around apologies, avoided ownership, and, of course, didn't mention the video, or the shove, or the years of silence. But it did include numbers. They offered to buy me out of the house, offered to reinstate me on family trusts pending new terms, offered to rebuild the bridge. Funny. They only remembered the bridge after they were stuck on the wrong side. I didn't respond. Instead, I made my own offer. I took that letter, folded it in thirds, and slid it into a stamped envelope, addressed it to myself, so I could open it later, when I needed a reminder that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be buried, not out of anger, but because the land on the other side is no longer worth crossing. I never heard back, which was the answer I wanted. Not peace through negotiation, but peace through clarity. And in that silence, I found something they never will. Freedom with nothing to prove. I'm not rich, not the way they are or were. No luxury car in the driveway, no stock portfolio singing digital lullabies, no private memberships or exclusive brunches. But I have enough. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to pay the paperboy with a tip. Enough to treat the waitress on her birthday without checking my balance. And more than that, I have something they can't buy back. Time. My days are mine now. Mornings spent with birdsong. Afternoons tinkering in the shed. Evenings with a worn paperback and the creak of an old rocking chair. Neighbors wave when I pass. Kids smile and say hello. No one here cares who I used to be. They care how I show up now. I sponsor a bench at the park. Planted a tree beside it. A plaque reads, "For those who were left behind," and kept going anyway. A young man from down the street asked about it once. Said he didn't talk to his father anymore. Saturday beside me a while. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Sometimes presence is wealth. Sometimes kindness is currency. And sometimes freedom is the greatest inheritance you can give yourself. I used to measure my worth by what I could hand over. Now I measure it by what I choose to hold on to, and what I let go of, for good. Let them keep the glass house. I'll keep the roots that don't crack when storms come. Because this life, it may look small to them, but to me, it's everything they'll never have. The last wedding I went to, they tried to put me at the back, next to the speakers, behind a pillar, close to the kitchen door. I smiled, got up, and left. Not out of anger, out of choice. I don't sit where I'm told anymore, because I remember the day they seated me far from my grandson. The way Vanessa looked at me like clutter. The way Mark avoided my eyes. And the way Linda just looked down. That day, I stayed. I stayed because I thought presence meant something. That maybe, just maybe, someone would see me and remember the man who built their foundation. But presence without respect is just proximity. Now, if I'm invited, I ask one question: is there a place for me at the table where I belong? If the answer's no, I don't go. Because I'm not a placeholder, not an afterthought, not a symbol of obligation. I am Thomas Walker, and I earned my seat. In my town, at my diner, on my porch, I sit wherever I want, next to people who see me, who don't whisper, who don't smile through gritted teeth, who don't measure my value by how quiet I can be. I laugh louder now. I speak when I feel like it. I take up space. And no one, no bride, no firm, no family tells me where I'm allowed to exist. Not anymore. Because I've been pushed down before, and still I rose. Not to reclaim a title, but to reclaim my name. And now, wherever I sit, that place becomes the head of the table. Some days, I pass by the old neighborhood. Not on purpose. Just on the way to somewhere better. The house still stands. Same blue shutters. Same cracked driveway. But the grass looks different. The laughter sounds forced. The windows don't glow the same. Sometimes I see Mark's car. Sometimes I don't. Either way, I never stop. I don't linger. I don't wonder. Because what they buried me under, I used as fertilizer. And I grew, not into who they wanted me to be, but into who I was always meant to become. The man who gave, who sacrificed, who waited, and then finally who walked away. I built something they never could. A life that doesn't depend on apology. A dignity that doesn't beg. A peace that can't be bought. I used to think legacy was what we leave them. Now I know. Legacy is what we leave behind. So others like me know they're not alone. That silence isn't weakness. That walking away isn't surrender. That some doors are meant to be closed and locked and never opened again. So no, I don't look back. I look forward to the sun in the morning, to the tomato vines climbing, to the next kid who sits beside me on that bench and asks, quietly, "Did it ever get better?" And I'll say, "Number, it got different." And then, "It got mine." If this tale gave you the closure you've been waiting for, show your support with a like, subscribe, and write your age wisdom deserves to be seen.